evolved the Oak Island universe is that type of person. You guys, I can tell, you're that type of person. You hear a story like this, you latch onto it like a dog, and you're just like, let's go. And yes, it's frustrating. And yes, you want it to be solved tomorrow. And yes, who doesn't want to find a chest of gold? Of course we do. Of course, everyone does. But it doesn't work like that sometimes. These things are hard. And so it's taking what it's taking. And that is, in this case, 10 years.
Right. How does it affect us in changing of the history or getting down to the nitty-gritty of the history?
It won't change history. It will explain.
There you go. Perfect. Thank you. That's what I was
it will explain parts of North American history you've never thought about.
See, I can't. The History Channel could not have come up with a better teaser than we just did right here. So I tell you what, stay tuned, folks, because this is going to be a good one. I can't wait.
This is Robert Clotworthy, the narrator of The Curse of Oak Island. And I have a question for you. Could it be that you are listening to The Curse of Oak Island and Beyond live stream?
This is a top pocket find, mate, for sure.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Curse of Oak Island and Beyond live stream, and I am live here at the Oak Island Resort with Dr. Ian Spooner. Sir, how you doing?
Really well. After a long day on the island, we just got here. I just got here. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you got a chance to get a little bit of food anyway. So
yeah. It was a crazy day with lightning, thunder, pouring rain, and as far as I know, I think folks are still working there right now.
Wow. Yeah, I know. I was actually doing a live podcast earlier today with Danny Henniger over at the Chester train station and the Curse of Oak Island display that he has over there. And it rolled in and it roared and boomed and banged. I thought we were going to lose power.
You know, one of our Midwestern folks there said that usually in Nova Scotia, we do a pretty poor version of thunder and lightning. It was kind of a little rumble, but yeah, today it was something else. So we had to stand down and for a while. So, and there's things that had to get done today. And so a whole bunch of them are still working.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. Let's see. Okay. All right. Yeah, let's see here. I'm going to get back to the chat. We've got quite a few. Dr. Spooner, no way. That's Jess Grollo. She does a lot of engraving and stuff for some of the folks, and she does my cups. Oh, I wanted to show you guys this. Look at this. Huh? What do you think of that? Is that cool or what? Yeah, you brought that over tonight for me. I had to wear it tonight.
Charles signed it, and Craig, and a whole bunch of folks there.
Yeah, Craig signed it. Scott,
Paul,
Troutman, Steve.
I don't think I signed it.
You didn't?
Yeah, but I'm not a celebrity like them.
You got to sign this. You got to sign this for me. Oh my gosh. And I really appreciate, you coming out and on Friday night, having dinner. I was able to sit down and have dinner with you and talk with you for a little bit. And Jeff Irving was there, so we got to chat it up a little bit. Yeah, you guys have some connections.
Well, Jeff and I worked not together, but worked at the same place back in the 80s at Lake Louise Ski Resort. And he ran a bar and I ran a ski shop.
Wow.
And at the same time. And then I grew up in a town called Kingston, Ontario, and spent time there as a sailor, have a boat here in Chester. And Jeff is a sailor and ended up spending all this time in the Caribbean. So, yeah, we had a good chat.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. I was just kind of watching, going back and forth between you two guys and talking about all the places you've been. It was and really didn't know each other then at that time.
No, we only got to know each other, I think, through some messages he sent me, and then through your connection with him.
Yeah, that's really cool. Let's see. All right, so we've got a lot of questions. Some of these were for Stephen. Stephen was going to be with us here tonight, but unfortunately,
he's ill. He's I think he even left the island a bit early. Yeah. It's long hours, and actually, one of the biggest challenges has been June's been super wet, so people are really soggy, and starting at 7:30, going till 7:30 at night. I think Steve's just run down.
Yeah, I don't doubt that a bit. And I know he was there. He was there for my birthday party, which was so cool. And the guys that showed up, and that surprised me. Linda had gone through a whole bunch of Oh, the kids that went to Cuba with Aaron Taylor.
Oh,
cool.
yeah.
Nice.
That's great. Kids that went to Cuba with Aaron Taylor from Laura.
Mhm.
Yeah, Aaron Taylor is a very good friend. Yeah, and teaches at Acadia classes there. He just got back from Cuba with a intro to archaeology class.
Really?
Yeah, it takes a whole
There
bunch of
was
them down.
there was a one of the, and it might be in this list of questions. I got a lot of questions here that we're going to get to in a few minutes, but I think one of them was asking, how does somebody that's like in their 70s or 60s or 70s get to be in one of your classes? Is that
Well,
possible?
just as a sideways kind of way of answering that, when I retire in a few years, I am going to do a master's in history
Really?
at my age, with hopefully with a good friend, a guy I'm writing a book with called Dr. David Duke. And yeah, because I've always wanted to be sort of a historian, but I went into science. And what's the closest in science to history? It's geoscience, because you're going back in time.
Right.
So I think any age, gee, I've had students well into their 70s.
Wow.
Just we call it up here, I think, what's it called? Elder learning or something like
Mhm.
that. But
Yeah.
yeah, no,
You never stop learning. I know I haven't.
no. In fact, the older I get, the more I know that there's less that I know that I should know. Does that make any sense?
Yes. Yes, it does.
Yeah. So yeah, you never stop.
Nope.
No, it goes on forever. So that's my big ambition, is to retire and then do another degree.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. So speaking of geoscience, I mean,
Right.
and you just mentioned that a moment ago, talking about going back in time.
Right.
How does that? Can you explain that a little bit? About you're talking about the layers of.
Yeah, and so,
Earth.
going right back to the start, when I got involved, I think in 2019, the whole premise was that Craig, Marty, and Rick really wanted somebody to take a look at the swamp
Mhm.
from a what we call a stratigraphic perspective, so change through time. And they knew that this is what I'd done in my research. And so what I primarily do is I core lakes and wetlands, that kind of thing,
Mhm.
and then we very carefully look at that core. And I say a lake or a wetland's like a book. And as you go, sort of, I guess from the top to the bottom, it's like going from the front of the book to the back of the book.
Mhm.
So every centimeter of that record, lake or wetland record, is kind of like a story. And we can tease all sorts of things out of it using techniques of the metals, for instance, sometimes the organic matter, sometimes the pollen. And I'm doing some work on pollen right now and at Oak Island. And so that's the kind of work I do. So I'm, in a funny way, a geoscience historian. So I look at my research, if I had to describe myself, as I look at change through time using geological records. So lake sediments, swamp sediments, that kind of thing.
Wow.
Mhm.
And I know that, and I've seen that before when they talk about something like a volcano erupting,
yep.
and it leaves a layer.
Yeah, and in fact, I was just talking about that with I think maybe with Craig. But how do we date things? And volcanoes are amazing because something like Mount St. Helens, 1981,
Mhm. Yeah, I think
was
so.
it 81? So it laid down a layer pretty well all over the Earth, that huge cloud. And now for the next 1,000, 10,000 years, there's going to be that Mount St. Helens layer. And anybody who's looking at a record can find that layer. We could probably even find it here in Nova Scotia. And you know exactly what time you're in that story. And so, we know carbon dating can be really difficult. We've had our challenges, but those kinds of markers, we call them. It's a kind of neat name. It's called isochronous marker. So isochronous. So iso,
Mhm.
the same. That's
Okay.
what chronos, time,
Time, right?
same time everywhere.
Okay.
So a volcanic eruption, a tsunami would be another one. They're isochronous markers. So now you just finished your first class. One of my classes.
Woo!
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
like
yeah.
that doesn't give me any
Y-
kind
y-
of
no,
a
no, no,
credit
no.
or anything. No,
No,
okay.
no. So yeah, those are really. We were talking about, because we have such problems with carbon dating, especially recent dates. Can we find isochronous markers right on Oak
Right.
Island to help us out?
Oh yeah, that would make a lot of.
Mm,
Yes, I
yeah.
can see where that would be very beneficial to what you guys are doing, because that is one of the most important things, I think, that what you're doing on the island is trying to date all these different pieces to find out who was there or what was, when you find I suppose if you
Mm.
found a piece of some, whether it be pottery or whatever, at this layer, then that would be able to give you a time frame for that.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm working with Laird on some projects right now where they found some really, really, really cool stuff. Like the archaeologists right now are very excited about a bunch of their projects, but it's hard with artifacts. There's always a time range. And can we use some of the techniques, what we call stratigraphy, to tighten up the idea of when that feature might have been first developed?
Right.
And so, yeah, I love working with the archaeologists because they have one perspective on change through time, with artifacts, and then I try to come up with information to help them out.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said Ian is cutting out. Is he still cutting out, Linda? No? Okay. All right. All right. Good. Yeah, we've got quite a few people that are checking in here tonight. I know we got a lot of different questions. And again, folks, when it comes to one of these situations like this where I have a guest on board, there's so much, the chat goes by so fast that it's really hard to keep up with it. So that's why we generally don't take questions from the chat during one of these. We may have, I don't know, did we get any?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get an update on seeing if anybody else might be able to be here tonight. Yeah. Phone died.
Did it just die? Oh,
Well, maybe
don't
somebody
know.
else. It's dead. Anybody got an Apple, lightning cord?
I do
Anyway.
actually.
Yeah, we should plug it in, and that way we'll get it. But anyway, go ahead.
But so anyway, so we have some questions, and again, some of the list of these questions were for Steve, but I think you said you're just going to go ahead and answer.
I
for him.
answer for Steve. Yeah, yeah. Poor Steve.
Does he still have his makeup trailer?
Yes, he does. He has
Okay.
2 of them actually right now. He's that famous. Steve has 2 makeup trailers, but it's certainly improved. He looks younger to me.
Yeah. I hear he's, well, we won't get
No.
He's got his personal life is getting exciting. Yeah.
Steve's an exciting guy.
Yes, he is.
Yes.
Yeah. It was so nice to see him the other night. I was really happy about that.
He's a good friend. We go skiing.
Yeah, I was
together.
gonna say, you
Yeah,
guys
we
go
go
skiing
skiing together. Yeah. So, I mean, if I could say one thing about the what I've learned in 4 years or 5 years now of being involved, so I made some really good friends, and that's probably the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, that's the same way with me for this doing this podcast. I have been able to meet such wonderful people like yourself and Steve and all the guys. I mean, and then to have them guys show up at my birthday, I mean, that just blew me away. One of the first questions on here was from Sherry.
Yes.
And she says, I know you have checked the sediment for gold in the Money Pit area, Ian, but could they have been mining for other things? Is there a possibility of any mining going on rather than treasure hunting, I suppose?
Right. I mean, that's always been a consideration because one thing that I'm a big fan of castles, right? And so I go to Scotland and Ireland and I love to just go see old castles because they tell a kind of continuing story. So one thing, if you know a little bit about castles, it's often castles are built on castles.
Yes, I've heard that.
Yeah, and built on castles. And so one of the thoughts with Oak Island, and this is not original, it's not my thought, is that maybe somebody was doing something different. Maybe the first excavations there were built around exploring for something, and maybe not gold, not gold or something like that, but something else. And then somebody took advantage of that excavation. Is there any evidence of that? I don't really know. The historians know that, perhaps Doug, people like that.
Right.
But one thing that interests Terry and myself a lot is that the rock underneath the Money Pit area is what we call chemical sediments, so gypsum, limestone. And where you have those rocks, sometimes you have salt. And one thing that was in incredibly low supply back in the 15, 16, 1700s on the eastern seaboard was salt.
Wow.
They'd have to go all the way down to South America in many cases to get salt for fishing, to preserve fish. So there's every possibility that maybe there was some work being done on the island looking for salt, and then maybe somebody took advantage of that. Who knows? There's a lot of different threads that you could explore that way, but that would be what would come to mind as a geoscientist in the area. People would desperately have liked to have found a source of salt right in Nova Scotia.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, I know. I talked to Danny Henniger about that a little bit today
Yep.
too, and he mentioned that he had no, he was talking about like if anybody would have been looking for gold, on Oak Island, and he said that he doesn't believe that was possible, or that there would be enough of any type of like fighting nuggets. You're not going to find nuggets or anything like that down there.
No, we have no evidence of that somebody was trying to explore for gold. We know there's mines in the area. There were small mines. So there's gold certainly in the area. And one thing that's always interested me is that if you were an explorer in Atlantic Canada, you'd be looking in the 1600s for furs. You'd be looking perhaps at wood, resources, but you'd also be looking for minerals.
Right.
And so I have no doubt that people were looking for gold. And we know that there's a place called the Ovens that's not far away.
I know. I wanted to get down there today. I was going to try.
And there's gold there. And there's also gold. This is what we call placer gold, or gold dust. It was sort of like in the 1898, when they went to the Yukon.
Okay. Yes.
The big gold rushes.
Yep.
They weren't mining gold from rock. They were, basically panning it from streams. And there is that kind of gold as well in Atlantic Canada.
Okay.
And not a huge amount of it, but it's there. Yeah. So on Oak Island, though, no, there's none of that. As far as we know, there's none of that there.
I know one of the questions that was in here was from Suzanne, and she mentioned about why did it go? And I don't remember this happening, but she said, why did it go from a dump truckload of silver to just traces of gold in the water?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I think of all the things that have shown up and things that I've said, that is perhaps the most notorious, if we will. But where that came from was when we were talking about that. The question was, and I think Doug Kroll had asked the question is, Ian, if you had to characterize what you're getting in the water as a few coins,
right,
or a dump truckload of silver, what would you say? And I'd say, well, it's not a few coins. The amount of silver we're seeing in the water has to be a lot more. So if I had to choose between the two, it would be a dump truckload of silver.
Right.
And of course, I think all most people heard was not that full explanation, but the dump truckload of silver.
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Thanks to editing, the wonderful world of editing on TV.
But I was serious about that. What we've done a lot of experiments to try to understand is the amount of silver and the precious metals we're seeing, is it consistent with what we call background? And so what we do is we sample all over the island in places where, just random places really, and we put down monitoring wells to really get a good idea, given the rocks and the soils in the area, what background levels are. And certainly there is an area in the Money Pit where the levels are a lot higher than background. Right. And we're trying to understand how that can be and what it's related to.
Okay.
I don't use the T word. That's really not my lane. I'm not what I would call a chemo archaeologist. In other words, to take the chemistry of water and move it into that realm is difficult, saying, oh, I got this chemistry, that means this. But certainly we're very excited about what the water has told us, about what could possibly be down there.
When you do that, this is one of the questions. I think it might have been in here also, but one of the questions I had for you was when you are working around the island in different wells that have been put down,
right,
and you're trying to narrow down where the source is,
right?
Are you basically just looking for the concentrations to increase going in a direction? How does that work?
Yeah, and that's if you were doing standard, what we call I call it a contaminated site investigation.
Mm-hmm.
I actually call Oak Island one of the most intensely complicated contaminated sites that I've ever investigated. Of course, the contamination or the hopeful contamination is treasure,
right?
And that's what we're looking for. But it's very, very complex. And so if you were in a more simple setting, you'd be looking for what we call a dispersal plume. Mm-hmm. So I've done a fair bit of that work where there's a source of gold somewhere, and you actually explore the till, the glacial till or the soil. And as the concentrations increase and as the plume narrows, you're moving towards the source.
Okay.
And even the old miners back in the in the States, in Yosemite, place like that, Nevada, that's what they would do. They'd pan for nuggets in the stream, and as the nuggets, increased in concentration and got bigger, they were going towards what they call the mother lode,
Right.
the lode. Um, and so you do that, but our big challenge is that we've got tunnels and shafts and tunnels and shafts and shafts and tunnels and tunnels and shafts. And so it was Rick who came up with the phrase chutes and ladders. Up here in Canada, I think we call it snakes and ladders.
Okay.
It's both things.
The game.
Yeah, the game.
Mhm.
And where, you go a few squares down, and then all of a sudden, oh my God, I'm on a ladder. Up here you go, and over there you go, and you're going all over. And that's our huge challenge in trying to trace the metal in water back to a source.
Mhm.
Is we're confounded. It's very, very difficult by all
Right.
these tunnels. But what I can say is that the more work that the drillers do, that Terry does, that Craig, everybody does to find these tunnels, that helps us make more sense of the water,
Mhm.
and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Terry's another gentleman who I'd love to have on the show at some
Mhm.
point. We've kind of reached out to him, but again, tapping into that knowledge level. I mean, and I suppose that
Mhm.
I don't know if I forget what his title is.
Terry's a hydrogeologist.
Okay, yeah.
But he's a geoscientist, like me. He's a member of the Professional Geoscientists of
Okay.
Nova Scotia. And yeah, Terry's amazing. I mean, there's no other word for it. He has been incredibly diligent and careful, thoughtful in logging all that core, and that's provided, I think, everyone with a really good sense of what is possible underground right now. Yeah, and he's a very, very, very diligent person.
Mhm.
Very, very careful geoscientist. So yeah, he was actually one of my first contacts
Oh, really?
when they were interested in somebody doing the work that I do. I'd known Terry for a few years because we go to professional meetings, same professional meetings together. And it's the other side of our life, the more academic
Yeah.
side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Terry's a geoscientist. He's a geologist, and on the show, and we spent a lot of time talking about everything from the work that he's doing to the stuff like the Stone Road and those features as well. He's really extremely well-rounded individual. Tony.
Come on in. Hey, we got a new member just walked in. Tony Sampson, how are you, sir?
How are you?
What-
Yeah. Well, you still got a few
you got a
minutes.
moment if you want to grab one. All right. Tony Sampson just showed up. He's going to be back. He's going to get himself a libation so he can join us here, and we'll have to pull him up a chair. There's only about 1,000 in here. I'm good. Thanks. All right, that's pretty cool. So we're gonna have Tony joining us here in a couple of minutes. So let's get to another question, right?
Mhm.
So let's see. Some of these were for Steve. Something about GPS.
No, but
whatever.
what's the question?
It says, Steve, what is your GPS gear for pinpointing locations? Is it accurate enough to know if you cross back and forth over a line between two located points?
Wow. Yes, and because I kind of work in a similar world to Steve. I used to be, up until a few months ago, the director of our applied geoscience masters in applied geoscience, and in MSCAG, Masters of Science Applied Geomatics degree at Acadia, and so I work a lot with folks who work with LiDAR, and published a few papers on that. And so that's why Steve and I have a lot of fun. And the other thing too that's really important is Steve is like critical to this whole thing, because without him, we'd never know exactly where we are. And so,
Or if you have crossed those lines.
yeah. And so what Steve uses is, I'm not sure if it's a Trimble setup, but basically his level of accuracy is centimeter level.
Wow.
Yeah, it's extremely accurate.
That's great.
And I can't imagine doing the work that I do without Steve's without Steve being there. He is the keeper of all the data
Mhm.
on where drill holes are, how deep they go, how much they deviate, even all the artifacts. He pins them, and so we can pull up the artifacts from 2019, 2018, and he even those are classified. There's an incredible team of people who are working to do, I think, what has confounded them a bit, that often the records weren't that well kept. And so Steve keeps all that data um, together for all of us, including Tony. The work that we do, when we find something, when we give it to Steve, Steve pins it, we know where it is, and we can always go back to that. So
Go ahead. This one's got that stuff on it. Grab one of those if you would. Just pull it right over here in the middle. And I'm going to hand you this, Mike, and then I will use that one. One of the other questions that was for Steve was about that. You know, when they put in the 4-inch one of the wells,
Right.
and it's going down and then it walks.
yes,
So it may start over here, but by the time it gets down to depth,
Yep.
it's walked a long way. How do you know where that drill is going?
well, Steve uses this downhole device called a gyro, and what that does is, I don't know, you might know, it's and nice to see you.
You too.
But yeah. And so the gyro, it might even be 10 feet. It takes a measurement in 3 dimensions.
Mhm.
So depth and then XY, which would be, you're that long sort of thing. And so he can log those holes. Sometimes they deviate a lot.
It's amazing how far it goes. or
Yeah,
can
so
go.
it could start up here, and then maybe there's a tunnel over here, but it snakes its way right down into the tunnel.
Mhm.
And that's been critical in just understanding these tunnels, because where you are on the surface doesn't necessarily tell you where you are with that
Yeah.
drill hole underground.
And if you hit wood or something down there,
Yep.
you have to know if there was a deviation, so you know where that spot is or that
Right.
tunnel is.
Yeah, exactly. So Steve's kind of the keeper of the gyro. I think a few other people can run it, and I know I think Scott, but I don't. It's way above my pay grade. yeah. So again, he's keeping all this data organized so that models can be made, and
Right.
visualizations can be done to try to understand what's going on at depth.
Right. Wow. How you doing today?
Good, thank you, mate.
Been busy?
Oh, insane.
Yeah, I was actually down at the and I'm pointing down the hill over here at the shop down there where and I bought another map. The guy said, "Yeah, you only had this was yesterday." He said you only had one tour yesterday. The weather's been pretty bad here lately. The last couple of days with fog out there. How does that affect your tours and stuff with having that much fog? I mean,
The fog is actually not a problem.
okay.
Yeah, the fog adds.
Bring that up just a little bit.
The fog adds adds another layer of spookiness to it, so you actually see it
Yeah.
as the sailors would have in years ago.
Right.
So as you're coming in, you normally, if there's fog in the morning, it sort of dissipates by the early afternoon. So even if it's fogged in here, you can't see a thing at the resort. By the time you get out around the island, especially to the eastern side, then you're seeing that. And you're also seeing the area where the young teaser, the American privateer ship, blew herself up and sailed.
Yeah.
So it just adds that era.
Oh yeah, that was such an awesome story that you told on the tour out there talking about that, and it was if you don't mind, if you want to tell that again real quick, but it was a ship that burst into flames, or how did that
No, it didn't actually burst into flames. What happened?
I'm thinking of two different stories there.
Yeah, the young teaser was an American privateer that was up here in 1813, and she was picking on the Nova Scotian and the British ships, and so the British sent out 2 frigates, HMS Hogue and HMS Orpheus, and they cornered her between Masons and Refuse Island. They fired upon her, and there was a British deserter on board the teaser, and he, rather than being hung and gibbeted as a pirate, he decided that he would walk into the magazine with a flaming torch, and he set the young teaser on fire. So she blew up and drifted in flames towards Chester.
Okay, that's the
And
one.
she came to grief, or parts of her washed up on Meisner Reef. And so,
Oh, really? Meisner Reef?
yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, the timbers from that are actually a church, St. Stephen's Church in Chester.
Yeah, I've heard that.
The cross is made from the timbers.
From the teaser.
Wow. Wow.
People say on a foggy night or a foggy morning that if you look out towards Rayfuse and Mason, that you can see the teaser on fire drifting towards Chester.
Tony, I sail out there, right? And I anchor, there's a deep little hole where you can anchor right
Around
at-
124 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to go there anymore now. Geez, why'd you tell me that story?
Well, I've got a theory there as well, Ian. I believe the more dark and stormy rums you drink,
Yeah.
the larger the chance of seeing the wreck.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Do you think that remember the story with, I think it was Dave Blankenship. David talked about seeing a fireball that he thought came on shore. We get into that whole paranormal side, whether or not people believe in that whole paranormal side. But I mean, is there some connection there? Possibly, maybe.
Quite possibly. I mean, there's so many spooky things that happen not only on Oak Island, but in the local waters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, me and Ian, when we were out there, remember we had 5 units, didn't we?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've been out on the water and I've seen things with the 5. We had all these units looking at what we were doing was looking at the offshore of Oak Island, looking for features, so on and so forth. And we saw the units react in a way. And Alex was there too.
Alex was there too. Yes.
Yeah, so it wasn't just us. It was at least 3 people saw our electronic sonar units just go kind of crazy. And as a geologist, I hadn't seen this. I've been on tons of lakes and a fair bit of saltwater environment too, and you hadn't seen it before, and we were able to replicate it.
Yeah.
That's the important
Yeah.
part.
3
being able to
times we
replicate
were
it.
in and out of there.
Wow.
And it wasn't just, I have 2 units on the boat. And then we had
I think I had 2 units running too.
you had 2 units running, and then we had the third, which was Ken's unit.
Yeah,
Because you were running the 32 kilohertz.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and all 5 of them out. And then we go outside and come back, and then they come back to life and then fail and fail and fail.
Yeah, so stuff.
That's
I mean,
just
there's
weird.
something. There's possibly geological reasons for it.
Right.
I always like to kind of default to the science side of things. I mean, my own little story was I was once anchored off of Tom Nolan's place in my boat with my son, and the only time we saw a fireball kind of go over Oak Island. But the cool thing about it wasn't one; it was 2, one behind the other, a double fireball. And we went, "Wow, I've never seen anything like that before." And this was before I was involved, long before I was involved. So I wasn't channeling any of the spooky stories at the time. But in retrospect, it was kind of a phenomenal thing to see, a double fireball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see somebody in the chat Zane brought up 1.6 gigahertz because that's a Skinwalker Ranch reference.
Oh, really?
They just showed on an episode of a couple of looking fireballs that went down and into the mesa out in Utah at Skinwalker Ranch. And that, my brain, it was when you said 2 fireballs, that immediately brought up that scene there. And we're going to be talking about that later on next week. But that's, I mean,
yeah.
What do you make of that? Is that atmosphere?
Oh, well, no, I just think it was a
anomaly?
thing. But
Okay.
isn't it a funny thing to be also, in Mahone Bay, Oak Island, all that kind of stuff? I mean, one thing that I grew up in a place called Kingston, Ontario. As a sailor, I sailed since I was a very young child. But the sort of the gold standard, if you're going to sail anywhere in Canada, was Mahone Bay. And so when I came out here and got a job 30 years ago, I thought, how lucky can I be to end up in Mahone Bay? So to this day, when I'm out on the boat with my wife or my kids or my out sailing, it's still, it's got to be one of the most beautiful places, but the history too. And it's not just Oak Island, it's Second Peninsula, it's Tancook Island, it's the pirates, it's the teaser, it's all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just full of history, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, the interesting thing when Ian said fireballs before, I didn't realize, talking to Colin the other day, when he was in the Oak Island Triangle there off Boulderless Beach.
Right.
Was it a year ago or 2 years ago? And he said, remember, Jeff, he said that he was there in another boat coming through they had an engine malfunction and they burst into flames.
Right in that same spot
Right
that
in the
all the
same-
eerie, weird stuff
Yeah.
is happening.
Well, and other people have said drones just
Drones fall
fall
out of the sky.
Yeah.
And that's where I recovered
Yeah.
that poor guy. In the
Oh,
ocean.
yes. The guy that he picked up in the
Yeah.
water.
Yeah.
That was it.
He fell out of a drone.
No,
No,
he didn't fall out of the
no,
drone.
no.
He was the one that capsized and drifted into the Oak Island Triangle there.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I know the story. Yeah.
Picked him up. Oh,
Right.
The
How
Oak
was it?
Island Triangle.
Yep.
The Oak Island. Remember that. And because he
Rivals the Bermuda Triangle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my
Only,
gosh.
only second to that. Yeah.
weird stuff happens in that
Yeah.
spot. I'm telling you. Yeah, it is creepy, Renee. You got that exactly right, because when you take, and you have to do this, folks, when you come up here, you have to go on a Salty Dog Sea Tour, because you're going to get all of these stories that you are such a great storyteller, and you go through these, and it's like we're on the edge of our seats in the boat just listening to these stories.
I've
that are
heard so many reviews from people. Like, I run into people
Mhm.
on the street and they've been on the Salty Dog tours. And this isn't an ad. This isn't, no, it's true. It's the truth.
Yep.
And because we haven't been able to run tours on the island for a little while, people come, they go on the tour, and they just have an incredible time. And it's just really great to hear.
Mhm.
So good on you. Good on you. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know
And
you have two other
And it's
skippers.
not just me. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm so fortunate that I've got some marvelous skippers. Like Jade and Kevin are phenomenal.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I think they give a better tour than I do. Yeah, so they
Well, I'll
really
have
are
to come
marvelous.
back and try it and go with one of those guys, and I'll compare it. I'll let you know.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So man, if we had known, we would have some questions for Tony. Maybe we can, look there. See, Tony tells great stories.
Mhm.
And I like what you said about, and I know I mentioned this the other day, but I like what you said about that. Never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
That was my
Yeah.
grandmother. Never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Ian, I have another question for you.
Sure.
This is from Maya.
Right.
Maya wanted to know, where does the blue clay actually come from? Where was it mined from?
It's one we've seen hints of this clay on the island that has a bluish color, and I think in a lot of, especially First Nations,
Mhm.
Aboriginal legend and story, clay has a lot of significance. Different colored clays, and I think, and I'm kind of projecting this. I wish Doug Kroll was here helping us out, because again, it's a little out of my lane, but I think it's the Americas, like Central and South America,
Mhm.
and so. And often associated with high silver too in
Really?
those clays. But we have seen these clays, and that has been the question: are they natural? Are they brought? Was this clay brought to the site? And if so, to what purpose? Why? I haven't really encountered much of it in my work. This blue clay, though we did see some, I think, associated with some features on the West Drumlin that I can't really talk about anymore.
Right. Okay.
That's where that one ends.
Well, we know that and this was, I always was very fascinated by the eye of the swamp.
Mhm.
And then you went out there, and I think that's when Aaron Taylor got brought into the scene, was about
Right.
that same time.
Yep.
And you guys went out there. There was this supposedly a circle of stones around the eye of the swamp.
Mhm.
And, you guys went out there. You said, oh, yeah, it's just a blue clay mine, and that's it. Okay, nothing to see here. And I was like, wait a minute. What's going on? It can't be that simple. I'm like, it's got to be a plug. Pull the
Yeah.
plug.
Well, yeah, what they had me doing there, and that was early on in my
Yep.
tenure was, and
Yep.
Tony, that's when we met. Remember, you were my motor for a while. Yes, in the boat. Yeah, we were working
That's-
together in the swamp. That was
Yes.
great. But what they asked me to do is core the eye,
Mhm.
and in the eye, which was a funny feature to begin with, the circular feature, we did come up with a really nice record of environmental change that went back quite a bit in time, and so we also excavated, took a look at it. We knew that stones were moved. So what it all kind of got down to, without getting into big long story and all the geochemistry and all that, was that it had a really nice record of human activity that was probably in the 1600s into the mid 1700s. So well before the kind of the searcher story.
Right.
And that was, for me as a scientist, it's quite publishable. It's beautiful data because nobody really disturbed that site. So what it actually was, not sure I can really. We're still kind of thinking about that, doing some work on it, but
Okay.
it was an important feature to pre-searcher people, and it had the feel of industrial activity.
Hmm.
You know what?
Right.
This was just not a fisherman or farmer.
Right.
Somebody else was actually involved in both using it and constructing it. It's a fascinating little feature.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
kept thinking it was some sort of a plug.
Right.
Maybe a plugging off a tunnel or something like that. But again,
Yeah.
we don't get the full story watching the television program due to editing and everything else. So
Yeah, I think the bottom line is down the line I'll have a class called Oak Island Ian's version,
I'm
the
gonna sign
science
up for that
the
class.
science of I don't know. But it is a fascinating feature. I was very lucky to be asked to do work on that. And we actually still have a fair bit of that material in archive.
Okay.
So if a new idea comes up, we can test it. Because unfortunately, sometimes when we want to investigate a feature, we disturb the archive that's there. We have to be careful.
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
we take multiple cores and put some away and freeze them, that kind of thing, and so we can continue to work
Right.
through time.
Somebody asked the question or brought up the point here about Tony and the trash cleanup that's been going on. Is that still Linda? Oh, ask Tony about the trash he raked up from the bottom of the ocean near Oak Island. Buoys, netting, weighted down.
We didn't actually rake it up. What we were doing out there was we were scanning. We thought there was a shipwreck out there, or a possible shipwreck.
Mm-hmm.
And so we spent a day what we call lawn mowing, so going back and forth, scanning.
Right.
And we were really excited. We thought that we had come across a shipwreck feature. So we put the ROV down, and what it showed was these, what looked like the stanchions of a ship coming up out of the bottom of the ocean. So very Titanic-esque. It looked like the bow of the Titanic coming out.
Wow.
And so me and Jamie hitched our gear on and we went down. And what we realized was that it was actually an abandoned mussel farm from about 40 years ago. And it was the buoys coming out of the
Oh, wow.
silk
Yeah.
that looked like the stanchions on the ship.
Right.
So actually Doug was with us that day.
Doug Kroll?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we ended up what was to be an hour excursion for Doug before we dropped him off turned into an 8-hour day. Because once we started pulling it up, it just didn't stop.
Right.
So we ended up recovering 5 tons of ghost gear.
Wow.
Didn't that make? I think that made sort of national news.
It made national news in Canada, and that's
yeah,
right.
Yeah, because it's a huge issue.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
This gear and removing it because it's a hazard to fish.
And whales, and it's like
Right.
there was and some of the other stuff we removed. There was seal skeletons, that had got caught in the nets. If you Google it, just Google Titanic ghost gear, and in Canada, and you'll actually see some of the images. As Ian said, it was on CTV.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
a big deal.
Yep.
Yeah, it's. I mean, cleaning up this gear is a huge. It's a huge endeavor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you guys did. I mean, everybody involved did a sort of public service by
Absolutely.
by getting that out of there.
You can imagine how much of that's down there.
Oh, we recover tons a year, but I think people don't realize that, and maybe it was a missed opportunity for Oak Island to tell the story that due to the stuff that we do, it's not just confined to one little island. By stuff like that, we're actually helping the planet as well.
Yep. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I just forgot, back to Ian's point before with the Eye of the Swamp. I think it was a year before or 2 years before, when I was in there probing that.
Yes.
That was it was interesting. I thought it was actually a freshwater spring because I could feel the thermocline, so the temperature change in the water as well. So,
Well, I think it's a freshwater spring too.
oh, is that right?
Well,
Okay.
yeah, we could go
Yeah.
down this, but I think it was a built structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it was probably built, to provide
Wow.
a source of water, but on
Ah.
a scale much bigger than just a fisherman or a farmer.
Right.
And I think we've got some interesting work that is happening right now to tie stuff like the stone road and the cobble path to the eye, and get a better sense that maybe there's an incredible kind of connective tissue with a lot of these features.
Wow.
I'll point to one thing because Rick always says, what, where, why, who, when, or
Yep.
something.
Yeah. Who, what,
Yeah.
why, when, and where.
Yeah. And, the who maybe is getting a little clearer. And once you have the who, then you can start thinking of, time periods and what they were trying to accomplish. But yeah, the eye was fascinating and a wonderful opportunity. I was very grateful that they asked me to take a look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we saw in the drilling down that was done just on right after the season finale.
Mhm.
I forget. I think the 13th of May. I think that was when the drilling down was on, and they talked about they were in Traverse City, Michigan, with Rick and Marty, and Maddie was there, and he was asking some questions, and they actually had shown that they are putting in the wall. I'm at a complete loss all of a sudden.
Dam.
Yeah, the cofferdam all
Right.
around, well, in part of the swamp.
Mhm.
And then, of course, when I was on Salty Dog Sea Tour, I said, "Oh, look, there's the excavator's got the hammer on it." So I
Mhm.
was guessing that was the hammer.
Yep.
And then I think somebody asked me later on, "Are you sure that was the hammer?" Oh, when we were at,
Mhm. Oh,
it was
yeah.
Scott. Scott was going, "Are you
Sure
it
that was the hammer?
And
Yeah.
I
Did
was
you
like,
really see that? Yeah.
I don't think we can confirm or
No,
deny that.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
Nope. There's very interesting things that are ongoing as we speak.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but I can't. Are you sure it was the hammer, Jeff?
I
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
It sure looked like it, but again, I'm not an operator of such things, so I
Right.
don't. Yeah,
It might have been a rock splitter.
yeah.
But-
But we know that they were talking about putting a cofferdam in
Right.
portion of the swamp.
Right.
But that, of course, they showed and of course it was Prometheus. They showed a little diagram of what it was going to look like, and it did not encompass the eye of the swamp, which I
Mm.
was really. I mean, that would be a huge cofferdam.
Mm.
But so it doesn't look like it's going to include that. But
No, I think if they end up doing that, I was aware they had that show, and those were plans. What'll happen this year, I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
But if they did do something like that, I think they're very, very interested in specific areas because they're deep.
mhm.
They have a long story to tell. They capture things either from right on the island to maybe elsewhere. So they're really interested in exploring that, and I think the road, the beach itself, the beach
Mhm.
has never been fully explored, and so the cofferdam just helps manage the water a
Yeah.
lot better.
Oh, absolutely.
If they indeed do that.
Yeah.
But as of now, I can tell you, I can look you right in the eye.
Don't know for sure if it's
Don't
going to
know.
happen. Yeah.
Exactly.
And again, like I said, we saw it on the drilling down, and they were talking about that was, and I think Marty actually said, if we do this, we're going to get started early with it. So we're
Mhm.
hoping
Mhm.
because there's always been that question. Everybody has always asked that question, not me because I don't
Mhm.
believe it, but that the island was actually two islands and that was filled in, the swamp was filled in. I personally don't believe that.
Mhm.
And the reason I say that is because of the lower water levels before.
Mhm.
It's just barely a swamp now.
Mhm.
If the water levels were lower then, it
Mhm.
would have been dry ground, I would think, at some point. But then again, why would they build a ramp and a road in there in the platform?
Well, I don't necessarily agree with the whole idea that it would have been dry ground.
Oh, okay.
And I think Ian was with me that day,
Mhm.
and we've been out there many times. Isaac's Point was
Mm.
actually dry land.
Okay.
So, that whole area, when I give it a wide berth by the boat, is because it's only 3 to 5 feet deep.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you go back 400 years, if you're looking at a foot a century, pretty
Mm.
much as rising tide, that would have been dry land. So erosion is a two-step process.
Right.
You have the erosion, the taking away, and then the depositation.
Mhm.
And so that Isaacs Point is open to the east southeast, and so that was the predominant weather. So the hurricanes would have picked that up, eroded Isaacs Point, and then deposited it in front of the swamp. Because you've got to remember, the swamp has been open to the ocean 4 times since the 1970s due
Oh,
to
really?
hurricanes.
Wow. Yep. Oh,
And
okay.
so-
Yes. Yes.
Just pounds right
Yes.
through the
Yeah,
beach.
yeah.
And so you've
And
got
that's
to
the hard side. Get-
yeah, and you've got to remember, it was only a few years ago that that whole roadway, before Billy put the wall in, was taken out, and the swamp was open to the ocean yet again. So when that happens, it's 2 islands
Mhm.
because it goes right the way through.
Yeah, with high tide too, and it's always time. Like, so, oh, was it 2 islands 4,000 years ago? Was it 2,000 years ago?
Right.
Or if we're really interested in 1690, let's say, what was it like in 1690? And there was a period, like Tony said, there in our record, we did a core in the deep swamp too, and the deeper part, and we see things like chloride spikes, and the chloride spikes is associated with big saltwater incursions.
Okay. Mhm.
And so, yeah, I believe too that at times that swamp was open to the sea. At times it was not. We know there's stumps in it, and
Yes, you
so
find one,
it's
yeah.
a pretty darn dynamic
Mm.
environment, and how people might have used it at the time they were there. What I
Mhm.
keep on telling people is what you see is a swamp now, but if you strip back the layers, it wasn't always like that.
All right.
So, and it's hard to explain that changed through time because all you see is a big muddy mess.
Right.
I've tried to say to Marty a few times, it really is a wonderful place. I don't get far.
No, I think we've spent a lot of time in
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
you
yeah,
have.
exactly. So
You in it a
yeah,
lot.
yeah, yeah.
Pushing boats around, and I still go back. It was like the I forget what season. It was like season 1 or 2 where you were in your wetsuit crawling or slithering around in the mud of the swamp. And
But the whole Stone Road story was an interesting one because we were doing
Yes.
sonar, that with my 30 kilohertz unit, but it was too shallow to run a motor. And yet I had to get these traces because the story, Rick had said, everything a lot, at least from my perspective, goes back to Rick. And he had said, be careful in this area. I was in this area and we hit some rocks and things like that. I said, okay, I'll be careful and do a survey. But I needed, you and I were the ones who were doing that survey to get the sonar to kind of see that underneath that mud. And it's so obvious now that there's that stone road, but at the time we had no idea.
right.
And yet, so it's kind of like without Tony, we wouldn't have done the sonar. Without the sonar, would we have done the probing? Without the
Right.
probing, we wouldn't have blah, blah, blah. So
Right.
it's not as easy as it seems. Maybe all the work that went into those sorts of things to figure
Well,
them out.
you talk about the stone platform,
Mhm,
and that's when you really came in on the scene for us anyway,
mhm,
and made a major, what I'm thinking is a major discovery of that stone platform.
mhm.
And then finding out and proving that it was man-made. So you go back to the whole swamp idea. Why would they have needed something like that? I mean, in my, and again, I
Right.
am not on the island. I don't know. I don't have the expertise that you guys do. So I'm talking out of ignorance and on my end, but that platform had to be made for a particular reason. What would it be? I don't know. Maybe unloading of a boat or something. I don't know. I mean, here it had to have been a wet area or wetlands of some sort. To why would they have needed that in there to build it up?
and
To
it'd
so
be
that
interesting. I don't know if we've talked about it a lot, you and I, but my idea is that again, it wasn't fisherman or farmer.
Mhm.
I think it might be a very big slipway. And if you have a boat, a big boat, a ship's boat, 26, 28 feet long that would serve as a tender for a
Yes.
big boat,
Yep.
you just can't pull it up on the beach,
Right.
especially if you have gear in it or animals, oxen, whatever.
Or treasure.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's whatever. And so you have to have, otherwise it's going to be pounding on the beach,
Yep.
a steep beach. And so you build a slipway. And the word that was used, I think Dr. Aaron Taylor used it might be Laird, was crudely made, but well engineered. And so it really, speaks to some purpose. And yet the lack of artifacts, the may mean that it was just used for a short period of time. And you can start getting in, your head can start getting around those kinds of assumptions. But yeah, it is a really, really important feature. I mean, I didn't find it like I was told by Rick to look in that area that he, and so I just, as a good, as a contractor like me does for their client, you try to do your best. And
Right. Well, you
yeah.
found that piece of wood that was smashed between the two rocks
Yeah, that
and then had it
again,
dated.
yeah, and again, that comes back to Rick saying, "Look, is there any? You need to find a smoking gun. You keep on saying that it may be, may not be, maybe, may not be." And so I spent many days trying to puzzle that one through. But that, to me, took it from possible to probable to pretty well definitive. And that was where Dr. Aaron Taylor helped a lot too, because he had a set of eyes from his Cuba experiences in terms of what do you do with wet ground.
Right.
You need to make it usable. And, you don't, I think they call it the paved area. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you don't, fit the rocks together absolutely like the Inca did or something like that. You just put rocks down rapidly that will make it a relatively flat, dry area so you can do your business. And what that business was, I wish I knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That leaves a big question on that.
And I mean, things change as well. Like, I can't remember if it's season 1 or season 2. I mean, we were probing not too far away from the eye. And if you go back and look at those old episodes, I think it's on the show, but we're probing with metal spikes.
Yes. Yeah, it was on the show.
And you can see that I'm probe, and then it drops off.
Yep.
And it was like, we even pulled a flat rock up, and Marty's like, yeah, kind of cool, but who cares, sort of thing. Because we didn't know back then.
Right.
And it wasn't until I put a line underwater of buoys.
Yes,
And
I remember that.
And I hadn't actually seen them because I was crawling around in the mud. It was only when I came up and Rick was like, "Oh my God, it's straight."
Geometric. Yeah.
And it was like, holy cow. So, I mean, we're learning stuff, as we go as well. It's, as Ian said before, you have an idea and then that whole idea gets thrown on its head.
And none of that, like all of that stuff came to me. Like, so I didn't go in there and say, "Oh, there must be a paved area here." No, it was hearing the stories, what Tony had done and what Rick had done, and saying, "Can you add anything to this?"
Right.
And then of course, doing some excavation. Billy was, excellent. Being able to move the mud but not disturb the feature, and then getting layered in. It takes a host of, maybe not thousands, but a lot of different eyes.
Right.
And I love that idea. Like when you ran through there with that 32, and the same with the ocean, like, it's depending on the unit you have, you can see stuff on the surface.
Right.
So when I say surface, I mean the top of the seabed or the lake bed. But Ian's unit, you can actually see below
You
the
can
silt.
blow through some of that.
And so, that was just like, holy smoke, that was amazing.
Yeah. It was for me. It was great to be able to blow through the mud and see the rock features. But again, I was a contractor working for clients who had a pretty good idea that you should be doing your work right there. So it's
You
just
had that advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I'm constantly amazed by the depth of knowledge that the folks who've been around a lot longer than me. So Tony, Doug, Paul, Greg, Marty, Rick, I can keep on going, Dave Blankenship, Dan Hensky, these people know a ton.
Yep.
And so I just try and layered.
Layered for sure. Yep. That
I just try to stay Terry, he's been on the drill for years. I just try to stay in my lane and listen to them and do as they ask me to.
Right.
That's really what I'm doing.
Speaking of Rick, and I know you guys have known him for a long time. I've never met him, would love to someday. But, we get the impression, first of all, watching the show over the years, and again, especially with having a podcast, I get a lot of people come up to me going, "Oh, it's all a bunch of crap. There's nothing there. It's just the big money-making machine." And I'm like, you obviously do not watch the show. And And then they start in with, oh, it's all planted. They tell them what to say and all of that. And again, I say, you don't watch the show. But when I watch it, and over the years from season one, I started actually watching about season two, toward the end of season two. Then I went back and watched season one again. And I have since then over again, even more times. But as I've done that, I have come to a sense that the integrity of Rick and Marty and all of you guys, all the team in there, that you guys have an integrity level that would prevent you from doing any of those kinds of things. You're not going to plant stuff. They might ask you to repeat something that already happened because the camera didn't catch it or whatever, but they're not telling you what to do. And so, and I guess where I'm going with this is Rick. My big question is about Rick. Rick comes off to me as a very genuine, nice person and a leader. Do you see him as a leader of all of you? As a, how do you see that?
Well, I don't know how he'd react. Absolutely. I mean, to me, I'm there in large part due to Rick. He's when I first came, I was new. I was there with my students, and there was this gentleman who was there at 7 a.m. And then at 7:30 that first night, he's putting the track back on one of our machines that was in the swamp. He's in the mud. This person works as hard, if not harder, than anybody else. And so people follow. I've always enjoyed working for people like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, I could say a lot more, but I think, you can't, conspiracies, everybody, all of us getting together. Oh, what are we going to, you can't do that. There's too many people involved, too many very, very unique and very individual people who have their own heads, their own thoughts. And there's a lot of really pretty good discussion that goes on. Not everybody agrees. So.
I would totally agree with Ian. Rick is honestly one of the nicest human beings I've ever met. And, my little daughter's growing up on the island, with Uncle Rick and Uncle Marty and Uncle Jerry. But I mean, when she was young, Rick would get Terry to get a load of rocks that he had found and identify them. And he'd put numbers on them. And then he would give them to Belle to go through and try and match them up. And then he would make jewelry or give her a piece of jewelry.
Wow. That's awesome.
As a prize. And I mean, if you look at all the fundraising stuff, all the money goes to the IWK Children's Hospital. He is an unbelievable guy.
And yet I get a sense he probably wouldn't be totally comfortable.
Right. That's what I'm saying, because he's not here.
And he's not. Okay? And here's something else that was this is Rick to a T. I think it was season 3, maybe. It was the Autism Foundation had a function here at the resort. And we'd taken them out on the boat. And then Rick found out that we were doing a bit of a function up here for them. So he ended up coming over with the metal detectors, and he brought Gary and Jack. And we put little gold coins, gold chocolate coins under the mats.
The gold coins we'd already found.
We haven't. That's no. Hang on. That was your share, wasn't it? Yeah. That was the Brinks truck that was coming off the island.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, and so that again, completely off his own bat.
Yeah.
And just super nice guy.
Yeah, we get that feeling.
Yeah, I also get the sense he's pretty astute character person too, and so he's built around him a really diverse cast characters, but all of the people also, I think, are aware of how something like this works well, and it has to be respectful, and so that's the other thing I found, is that when I was here, I didn't know what to expect. I had no idea.
Yeah.
But it's
Laird said the same thing when he first came.
But it's a very respectful environment. And so you can do your different stuff. You can have differences, but there's going to be no yelling. There's going to be no screaming. There's just, people listen, and maybe they'll beg to differ, but that kind of environment, it's really fun to work within that environment. You know, there's not a lot of stress around.
Right.
Well, that's not true, actually. We're trying to find something here, you know,
Right.
but it's that's a good environment to be in.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody, and that brings up a good point too, because one of the people asked that question about you guys never clown around at all out there at all, right? Yeah.
No.
I mean, you're never playing
No.
practical jokes
No,
on
I
each
think they could have
other.
a whole season
Sit
of just
on-
blue
yeah.
of just the bloopers and the funny
Yeah.
stuff.
It's
Yeah.
a lot of funny stuff happens.
Yeah, and I think it's how like I'm not there there are folks there every day,
Right.
all day, and it's not how I roll. I'm just there a few days a week to help when I can. But to keep things light, people really, share stories, jokes, funny stuff. It's a pretty lighthearted
You have to.
at times.
to.
At times.
At times.
Yeah, but
It's time for seriousness, but it's okay every now and then to have a little fun. You
yeah,
have
it's
to.
just like today they were going till 8 o'clock tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just got to get the job done, right?
Have any
So,
funny stories that you'd like to share?
I've got to think about that a bit.
Okay, go think about that. We'll
There's a lot. Some of them aren't ready for prime time. They're always there's always some good gags,
Yeah.
and people are Doug is especially good at that. So I mean, one of the ones that I found personally sort of funny after the fact was I was doing a presentation a few years ago, and it wasn't maybe the most exciting stuff that I was going to be presenting, but it's important, and that's the other thing. War rooms are very important to us because it's a chance to share and to talk about ideas or what you found, and everybody gets to know and question you, and so on and so forth. And it's done in industry, it's done elsewhere. This isn't something new, but all that day, it was later in the afternoon. People were coming up to me and saying, "Boy, I hear you're doing something really special. Like Rick's been saying this is the most important thing that he's ever heard," and blah blah blah. And I go, it's not that important, but people are coming. Everybody's coming up to me, and I'm getting all worked up, right? like this isn't that big a deal. And so Rick starts in and looks at me in the war room and says, "Well, I've waited years for this war room." This is and I just started, like, my eyes got bigger and my mouth, like, what am I missing about this? And then of course laughing at everybody. But there's a lot of that to keep the stuff light.
Yeah.
And and practical jokes, when appropriate.
Right.
But everybody's working very, very, very hard too.
Yeah. And that's why you need that, because of the stress level. Every now and then you just have to laugh. You have to. I mean, that just keeps keeps us sane.
It's really important. Yeah, that respect, having this overarching sort of atmosphere of respect for each other.
They've never played any jokes on you, have they?
Oh my God. Yes. And Doug was involved in the last one with Walter.
Oh, Walter, yes.
Walter,
They put a shark's fin on his head. And there was that one.
Yeah, Doug's the architect of a lot of that stuff.
See, now I wouldn't get that from
No,
Doug,
no,
if you check it out on Facebook, he's got a couple of those ones where he had us singing as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All these kinds of things.
all kinds of stuff goes on. Yeah. But,
you always think Doug is always so serious all the time, Mr.
No. No, he keeps it light. And
that's funny.
But he's also about the most inquisitive person I've ever met. I've never met somebody who's able to kind of mine into an idea as deeply as Doug. So he's got that side too.
Yeah. Because some of the things that he's found out when he was talking about the ship's log,
right,
that he came up with and he presented, that was the Duke d'Anville.
Right.
And talking about that ship's log. I mean, that kind of thing there. And again, it goes back to that complexity of the who, what, why, where, and when.
Right.
All these different people that have maybe had some involvement with Oak Island over the years. And every time you find something like the stick in the swamp or in the rocks, 1200,
Yeah.
like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Now we're going further and further back, and that just involves more and more different peoples.
Yeah, but I think you've got to remember, like a lot of people don't realize this either. Like, if you look at North American history, so many people believe that, the North Americas were found by Christopher Columbus
Yeah, right
in
now.
1492.
Yeah.
And we know that's just crap. I
Yep.
mean, we've got a Viking settlement up in Newfoundland that dates back somewhere.
Alonso Meadows.
Yeah, exactly, to
Yeah.
950, 980.
Yep.
So we had European settlers here 500 years before Columbus.
Right.
And it's not like they came over on a boat, jumped off, went for a pee, and left.
Yeah, exactly.
They had a fishing village to which they came back. Same as the Basque fishermen.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories, of the Basque being basically telling, "Hey, Chris, you should explore over there because we know all these things, and you should, so But yeah, so this is there's maybe not hidden, but there's a story there, and people like Doug and Judy and others are super capable at finding those very, very hard to locate threads, because it wasn't the big news of the day. It wasn't the Columbus or the whoever. It was folks just traveling and maybe even getting blown off course.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's where they end up.
Yeah, we've had some researchers like Andrea talking about the Zeno brothers and whatnot, that they were pilots and did they help the Sinclairs make their way over here?
Yeah.
Again, it's one of those.
Stories untold.
Yeah.
And I still believe that whoever came here obviously came from the ocean.
Yep.
It's not like they dropped out of the
Oh,
sky.
right. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you look at the coast of Nova Scotia and the wrecks and the reefs, I mean, there's a reason we've got thousands upon thousands of shipwrecks here.
Mhm.
And so chances are that whoever came, I believe part of the Oak Island treasure is probably still on the bottom of the ocean because not all of them made it. I mean, that's why we have, like the Spanish wrecks down in Florida, 1622, 1715, all those fleets that wrecked.
Mhm.
Yep.
And I believe whoever came here probably lost a ship or two in so doing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's again not my lane, but just being a sailor here and sort of investing myself in that, there's 1% of the stories being told, because so much happened that just wasn't in a logbook or wasn't written up, in some kind of admiralty record or something like that. It's just folks doing their thing, and yeah. So
There was a statement that somebody, Linda, that something about the stick. Was that? Could you put that back up? I know now you got to go search for it. Sorry about it. It was something about
the darn
how
stick.
Ian could make even a stick interesting.
I tell you, yeah, my name and I've seen some Facebook. I don't do a lot of social media at all, but people are getting a little bit tired of wood. It seems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I say that when I do the podcast and we're
Mhm.
going through and we're doing an episode review, and quite honestly, not every one of them is a great find, and sometimes we have to find the little, if I could use this term, pieces of gold from each episode because there's 25 in a season.
Yes.
So not every single one of them is going to have a lot of wonderful things. There it is. Ian's the only person that can make a stick interesting.
Tell that to my class. They still fall asleep,
But it is though, because
right.
they keep finding wood,
Right.
in like when they were putting in the caissons or whether you're putting in the regular wells that are being put in, you're finding the stick, but that you date those,
Right.
and they are telling a story.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a searcher story.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a really hard story to decipher because the whole problem with carbon dates is that once you get around about 1730, maybe, then we get this effect, sort of a plateau effect, and all that means is that you get multiple dates.
Right.
And so one of the cool things is that if you know the context of the wood, if the wood was found 50 centimeters down in the mud, then that upper date of 1910 to 1940 can be thrown out. You can start to get rid of some of those multiple dates just by playing what we call it a stratigraphic game, using the stratigraphy to your advantage. But that gets kind of esoteric pretty quickly. And it is, though, a contribution, I think, that's been important because, Rick, everybody's super careful that if we find something that's important to keep it in its context until everybody's had a look.
Mhm.
So whether it's Laird or Helen or the archaeologists at that crew or myself or Terry or something like that, we can look at the context, because once we disturb that, all we've got is the date.
Yep.
And it could be 1680 to 1710, 1750 to 1810, 1840 to, and then what do you do with it?
Right.
So yeah, we're trying to be really, really careful.
Yep.
And wood is important, because what else do we got
Exactly.
today?
Yep. Yeah, I didn't realize that there were so many we knew about all the different shafts that are in the money pit, and and they thought, and they still, I don't know if that the last we saw during season 10, Marty himself even said, well, the garden shaft, we always thought was a searcher shaft. Now we're not so sure. Now we don't know at this point, whether it is or not, the actual money pit. Or was, because it didn't go down far enough for one. It only went down about 80 feet. Now they've added, is it about 10 feet of on top of the money pit? The original floor of the money pit has been added.
I
about
think
10
yeah,
feet.
I think somewhere around that.
So
I'm not
for
sure.
the plat,
Yeah,
for the
be-
cranes and
exa-
everything else.
Yeah, it's certainly being modified
Right.
to
So you have to add that to the depth of your digs.
Right. Yeah,
So-
and that's where Steve comes in and Terry
Mhm.
comes in. Very important, because they keepers of the data. They can help us reset.
Mhm.
You hit a tunnel at 90 feet. In the old days, it might have been 80 feet.
Correct. Yeah.
And that kind of thing. So
Yep.
those are the bits of the lore that I'm still just trying to
Yeah.
keep my head above water on, because there's so much going on. I mean, from my perspective, one thing that's been impressed upon me is that though we understand a lot, some of the original ideas, where is the money pit, is still not.
Defined. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still there's still questions there.
Mhm.
And so and that's Doug and Paul and Marty, Rick, Craig, that whole crew working very hard to somehow define that.
Yeah.
It's
Well, they punched 400 holes. I mean, it's like Swiss cheese now up there. It's plus the caissons that went in over the years. And C1 is the only one that's still, or is how many are still there? Is it?
some there are quite a few that are there. Some are buried.
Oh, okay.
The whole caisson, steel caisson, is in there, but C1 is the one that's quite obvious.
Yeah. Yeah. It still sticks up.
10X, but that's up on the hill there.
Do you ever consider diving down there? And see, like C1 or one of those, go down in the caisson?
Yeah, I mean,
That'd be scary for me. I don't
it's
know.
way wider than the well that was in New
Yeah.
Ross.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that was way narrower than that.
What was that? You were in a well?
Well in New Ross. Yeah.
Oh, really? How deep?
Oh, it was only shallow.
Okay.
Yeah, that was
But
at
it was tight.
Alessandra's property.
that's
The
good.
cage wouldn't even fit in that one. We had to go down on
Yeah.
they put me down on a wooden chair, like a bosun's chair.
Really?
I've been there. I just saw I was there with Alessandra
Oh, yeah.
and Carmen.
Yep. So
Yeah,
yeah,
we
they
were up
threw me
there.
down. Well, didn't throw me down, but yeah, yeah. But
And you saw that triangle on what
yeah,
appeared to be a triangle.
yeah. So it's the same thing. There's a lot of Masonic symbology, and the thing is with markings on rocks, you can go down to the waterfront in Halifax,
Mm.
and if you go down Barrington Street, you'll see the broadhead arrow mark on a lot of those. It was the ordnance mark.
Mm.
So that was on everything British from 1300s on.
Mhm.
So every pick, shovel, axe, spade.
You showed us those nails.
Yeah, the nails.
Yeah, even
yeah.
the nails.
Right. Yeah.
And so, with things like that, it's that was British military. So if it was a British military construction, you would find artifacts like that. I mean, they even marked the trees.
Yeah, in
so-
America.
in the US, and yeah,
Uh-huh.
and I mean that. And if you look at the Battle of Bunker Hill, the Americans flew the pine tree flag in protest to the Pine Tree Act.
Yep.
Which stopped them cutting down their own trees.
Oh, really? What was that? White pines?
Yeah, and so they would mark them with the broadhead arrow mark. And initially it started out, I think, at 26 inches, and then went 24 inches, 22 inches, 18 inches.
Wow.
So that was the protest. They couldn't even cut down their own trees.
We used to call it in where I grew up. We used to call white pines hanging trees, because if you cut one down in the old
Yeah,
days,
it was-
you would be hung.
Yeah, it was treason
Yeah,
because it was
yeah.
the king's property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
exactly.
king's
Yeah.
property.
I never
yeah.
knew that was. Yeah, we just called them hanging trees.
But everything had that broadhead arrow mark on it.
Wow.
So, I mean, there's a great example of that in Halifax. It's a shipwreck that sank in 1797, so 2 years after the Money Pit. And she was called the Tribune, but she was actually La Tribune. She was a French ship captured by the British. And so when you dive on that, you can actually see French and British nails.
Oh,
and the British nails have the broadhead arrow mark on the underhead.
So she was captured. It was a prize. The British.
Yep. And then
Uh,
it wrecked in Herring Cove,
Mhm.
and you've probably sailed in there, Ian.
Yep. Yeah.
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 And so they've named a street in Halifax, Joe Cracker Drive, after the young boy from Herring Cove that rowed out to try and save the
Save-
sailors.
Wow. Yeah, it's incredible history.
Yeah, I mean, this whole area is filled with history.
From that 1600 on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That you can, and you talk about some of the people that have been here long before that.
Well, the
too.
indigenous were here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
tens of
absolutely.
thousands of
Yep.
years.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, we talked about the funniest moments. Dick asked a question. He said, how far back do public or private survey records go to compare geophysical elements from then to now?
That's kind of in Steve's lane.
Okay, is it? Yeah.
In terms of really well surveyed, there's meets and bounds. Turn left at the tree with the crook, go 100 yards, turn right at those deeds have existed for hundreds of years. But in terms of surveyed, I think maybe mid 1850s, that for surveyed like with the rod.
The island was first cut up by Charles Morris in 1762. It was cut up into 32 4-acre lots.
Yeah.
And he wasn't very imaginative because when he named the island, he called it Island Number 28.
Really?
And so Oak Island wasn't always Oak Island.
It was Island 20. Oh, okay.
Smith's Island?
It was Smith Island, and then it was Gloucester Island, named by the British. Then Island Number 28 after it was surveyed in 1762.
Right.
And then in the late 1700s, as Ian said, it was Oak Island because
Right.
of the oak trees.
Because of the canopy oaks?
But Charles Morris, he was the general surveyor of Nova Scotia. And Morris Street in Halifax is named after him.
Right. Oh, okay. Wow. Well, it goes a lot further back, than I did.
And the reason he surveyed it, or one of the stories of the reason he surveyed the island, it was the only island in Mahone Bay that he actually cut up.
Mm.
And that was because of the stories dating back to the 1600s that it was actually Captain Kidd's treasure, because Captain Kidd was executed in 1701.
Oh, okay.
And so people believed that on the way back to the UK, that there was treasure placed there by Kidd.
Right.
In the late 1600s, early 1700s.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah. Well, there's some people that believe that that the boys,
Mm.
and again, they weren't boys, they
They're
were
young,
men.
Yeah.
But the Smith, Vaughn, and McGinnis actually got the story from somebody on the deathbed. I've read and I've heard from some people who have told me that. I get a lot of theories to me all the time.
Mhm.
But there was a deathbed story told to them. That's why they had originally gone to look over there. But
Mhm.
you look at 1795, who owned property already on the island? Sam Ball.
He had been
Right.
there for 10 years.
Yes, by that
Yeah.
time.
Right.
So
So it doesn't fit.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, it just doesn't. And but
And
there's
Donald McGinnis was there for a while too, wasn't he? When did he come? He came well before that as well, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah, I believe McGinnis was there before that 1795 as well. I mean, 1795 is a nice story,
Mhm.
but I mean, people were on the island way before that.
yes.
And if you look at the whole Sambal story, I mean, why did he come to Oak Island? Why didn't he take the 4 acres of land the British would have given him on the mainland?
Right.
Why Oak Island?
Yeah.
And why did he, move right next door to an American pirate?
Exactly.
And
then ended up buying or getting
and
that
then
lot,
he
buying
ended up getting that lot as
Yeah.
well, and another,
James Anderson. Yeah.
Mhm.
and he ended up with 9 4-acre lots
Right.
on the island. It just,
Golden cabbages.
yeah. You couldn't get that today growing 4 acres of marijuana, let alone 4 acres of cabbage.
Yeah. And these are, I mean, for me as the kind of science guy coming in, these are the stories that I continue, to listen to. That's why I was kind of, when they played that joke on me, I mean, I love going to war rooms where these are the stories that are told. If I'm going to be talking about coal or wood, I can even get me pretty bored, But so yeah, even I'm learning from this guy right now.
Oh,
and it's just so much. There's so
There
much.
is. Truly is.
And so I really sort of hats off to people who have really, really followed the story, really understand it.
Yeah.
I didn't. I came as a contractor, as a helper. And
Are you invested in the whole thing now, you think?
it's one thing that has been asked of me. I try not to be, because that's the way I think I can do the best work.
There you go. Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard because it's just so intense. And then one of the hard things is when you get data, people will take that data and they'll invest it in a narrative, a story, something they know. And I can't control that,
Right.
nor should I. My data is my data. It's given
Right.
freely. This is the dates I get for the things I do. Then I have to give that to the people who are investigating the history, the stories. And it doesn't necessarily mean I agree or disagree, but I try to keep at arm's length and just
Right.
kind of listen a lot.
Yeah. Laird, you talked to Laird about that, and I have
Mm.
on several occasions. Laird, he took a big risk as an
Mm.
archaeologist coming to Oak Island originally with Fred Nolan
Mm.
because it was considered a treasure hunt. Archaeologists are not on treasure hunts.
Mhm.
They are not treasure hunters. They look for artifacts to tell a story. So he had to really, he spoke just like you just did about that. He's there to do a job, and he's there to retrieve artifacts that tell a story that go back in time, not a treasure hunter.
Yeah, and I think Rick, and stop me if I'm putting words in his mouth, but he'd also say it's not just a treasure hunt.
Oh, yeah.
It's a information hunt.
Yep.
I think he
I would
really
agree
just
with you
wants
on
to
that.
know what took place.
Yeah.
What sort of solve the mystery. And so Rick has an intense interest in the stories and piecing that all together. And I think Laird does too. I mean, he and Helen, they're incredibly important.
Oh, absolutely.
And it is, and people just don't understand that. I don't think people understand that Laird's work too is extremely important, because he's a bridge between government and regulations and how we go about doing archaeology, and the island and the folks there trying to understand the story. Laird's critical as a bridge there. It can be a very difficult position.
What do I wanted to ask you real quick too, and we're going to wrap this up here in just a little bit because I know it's getting late here.
It's dark out.
Yeah, I know. What would you consider your looking back over the last 10 years? What would you consider one of the finds on the island that you find most intriguing? I know there's been a lot. Like for me personally, it's like the lead crosses comes to mind for me. That's one of the things that I think is very, very important. But what do you think?
I mean, lead cross, important. And again, it's like Ian said before, it's putting it in context as well.
Yeah.
To find a lead cross on the beach, was it dropped or did it wash in from a shipwreck?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Both options are there. The swamp area has always interested me from day one. And I mean, I've always found it weird. There's things there that just don't fit. The whole Sambor story, it just doesn't fit. And when something doesn't fit, you've got to investigate it further. It's like the whole what, when, where, why, who. So we know he was there. And why did he pick that lot? Why did he liaise with the pirates that were there? And some people say, well, how did he do so well in a racist environment? And maybe pirates are your answer, because pirates didn't care if you were black, yellow, green, or spotty.
Exactly.
With one man, one share, one vote. And so as far as artifacts or items found, then I think the roadway in the swamp and some of those artifacts under there, again, it just puts a different time frame on it.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what were they? Why were they there? And how did they get there?
Yeah. To what end?
And to what end? Yeah.
Yeah. Because again, I don't think it was fishermen or farmers. It was something else was going on. And yeah, that was I felt those features, because I was invested in them, kind of got the hook in my mouth. I was the fish kind of going,
Yeah.
okay, I'm but I think, one thing that I can add to that is that even this year, like, there's new stuff, and I can't believe it. like, when is this island going to stop? And I wish I could tell you the new stuff so far this year that they've, and I'm not trying
Yeah,
to
I know you
sell
can't,
it,
but
sell
yeah,
it,
you're
but
right.
it's-
but
No.
I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I was on a site. Did they talk about Lot 5 last year on the?
Quite a bit, yes.
Oh, well, there'll be,
Yeah,
more stuff.
yeah.
Very, very interesting. And Laird's is super excited, and it's lovely to see the archaeologists, quite excited and doing really, really fine work. Beautiful. Yeah, I think just every kind of year there's new things, and but the story still is. You feel like you're still not
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's
One step forward, 3 steps back.
Oh, and I've said it before. It's like everything you find, or everything one of us finds, because again, it's like Ian said before, and there's so many people doing their own individual jobs, and it's like you put your flag up and go, "Oh, look, I found this the other day. It's really interesting." And then they might go, "Yeah, that's kind of cool. But look what he found yesterday."
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just,
yeah,
it's a
exactly.
big crew. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, with that, it's again, as Ian said, this year there's been some really cool stuff.
Oh,
Mhm.
can't
Yeah,
wait. I
yeah.
can't wait. And that's for us, for us that are the fans of the show. We really, really want to know what's going on all the time. And we just have to wait for that. I've said it before, and this is something that Scott said to me, about the Christmas present. You got to wait for that Christmas present. It's one of those things that, we want to know, but yet it's like, I would almost rather wait until it's solved and then tell me the solution, the who, what, why, where, and when. And because but yet it's so exciting to see the different things that are found along the way. And in the frustration, you talk about not last season 10, but season 9. Season 9 was Jiminy Christmas.
Yeah.
Putting down what we thought was going to be 3 caissons, the
Right.
10-footers. Then it was 4. Then it was 5.
Right.
And they all came up empty-handed.
Yeah.
The money that went through, and we could see the look on Rick and Marty's face and Terry, everybody. And they put this case on another one. We're going to go for one more, and came up nothing.
Mhm.
And it's like we were disappointed as fans of the show watching this. And I told folks when we were going through those episodes, imagine how they feel. You guys feel.
There's a
going
lot
through-
of emotion. I mean, and I'm kind of standing back from it because I'm not directly involved in that, but there's just an incredible amount invested
Mhm.
in it, and it's all, I say it's like it's all genuine. This is not, snickering after the fact. Oh well, whatever. No. It's not that way,
Mhm.
and that's what's kept me, involved.
Yep.
The integrity of the whole
Yes.
thing. Yeah.
For me too. One of the questions about the wood, real quick, go back to that.
Mhm.
We know you test it for dating.
Right.
Do you also test for the species?
Yes, and there's some very, very interesting information came out on that
Mhm.
about 3 weeks ago, with an expert from the States who had some wonderful insight into some of the very critical artifacts. And I can't say any more because
Okay.
it really helped them understand, wow, these things actually came from places we didn't expect, and they're very important artifacts.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was very good. That was very good. For me, it was adding on because the dates were the dates, but
Right.
they were doing some really interesting work. A researcher at university group in Southwest US.
Interesting. So many people, when they give us their questions, like this one, like it from Jim, said, "My wife and I love the show and never miss an episode." Now, I don't because I talk about them so much, but this is the thing. This has affected the lives of so many people.
Mhm.
What you guys are doing out there, and we all are. I mean, it has become. We look for it. So many people have told me, "Is it Tuesday yet?" Because that in the States we get it on Tuesday. You guys get it
Yeah,
on
it's
Sunday
Sunday,
night up
yes,
here,
yeah.
and I know you probably don't even watch the show.
Well, we're there.
You're right.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
there. You don't
yeah.
need to watch the show.
Sometimes I feel I should, because there's things that people tell me well, we saw this, and I went, wow.
Really?
Yeah, because it's
all the time.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
an interesting thing there, though, Jeff, is like you said, people don't miss an episode, and I get a lot of this when they come out on the boat,
Mhm.
and it's a show that's a family show. It's like when I was young.
Yes. Oh,
we
yeah,
would
for
sit
sure.
down in front of Disney and you would watch that.
Mhm.
And this here is a group of people, and it's it's not like we're out there cutting each other's throats.
Oh,
Yeah.
I would be gone if
Yeah.
it was like that. It's just not in my DNA. I would find that very uncomfortable.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
we actually like each other.
Yeah.
We go
Yeah.
out and have a beer.
Yeah,
It's-
yeah. It was really funny. I think was it last year we were out there. You were with some folks on your on one of your tours. I was in my sailboat. Then Doug was in his motorboat. We were all out.
when we're all out.
Oh, dude, you know, is that okay? I think it is. You know, you know. So yeah, that keeps it's honest. You know, there's a lot of integrity, and it's amazing that Rick and Marty and Craig, you know, the key
Right.
people have been able to keep that ship sailing in the right direction all that time.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah,
And it
hats off
comes-
to them.
And it comes across like, some of the human stories I hear, like there was one lady from Scotland, and she had had a stroke and she was on recovery and she would watch the show, and it was something that her and her husband could do together.
Right.
And then so when she recovered, she's like, oh my God, we've got to go and actually see this place in real life.
Mhm.
And then I had a little kid on the boat 3 years ago, and he was a very large kid. And his mum said, "Oh, look, he loves the fact that you and Gary are joking around. You're both out there with metal detectors and things. You're in the water, he's on the land." And so she bought his son a metal detector, and they came out and saw me last year, and I didn't recognize the kid.
Yeah,
Wow.
changed, right?
He
Changed his life.
He was up every morning walking the beaches.
Wow. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And it brought a tear to your eye. It was like,
Oh,
oh my God.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
And so that's not us. That's people getting motivated,
Mhm.
because of a story,
Right.
and I mean, for God's sake, you can walk down any beach and find treasure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I often reflect. I'm pretty lucky at this stage in my career to have this kind of opportunity and explore something new. But I think the key thing is it's taken the kind of work that I do, but integrating it into all these other I call them narrative stories. And so I also feel very fortunate. Just when I was first asked, I don't know, but I just really reflect back that I told Rick the other day, thanks, appreciate it. When I go to the old age home, and everybody brings show and tell, I'll have some really cool shit to bring. And they'll say, "You wasn't on a TV show," and I say, "Yes, I was."
Yes, I was.
and I'll have my little bag of things. I have a hat like yours that I have with and it's very important to me.
Yeah.
It's
In fact, we
important.
could be in the room next door to each
Yeah.
other with our shit.
You never know, right?
Yeah.
But
And I'll
have
be
a
in the next room
You'll
over-
have better show and tell than me. That I can be certain of. I can be certain of that. Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah.
Honestly, it's exactly like Ian said. Like, with the integrity that is all part of this, and the fact that everybody is working so hard, and it's showcased your expertise as well, your field.
Mhm.
And
Yes. Yes.
and it's
Yeah.
showing archaeology in a new light. It's the thing that's blowing me away is the speed in which technology is now up here with us. Like if you look at GPR and the fact that some of our scanning units,
Yeah.
like side scan and sub-bottom profilers and that like that, go back to season 1 when we did the dye test, and we had to throw a helicopter up with Rick and Marty.
Yes.
And me and Dan Hinsky were
Yep.
off the north side of the Smith's Cove. Now, for God's sake, we just throw a drone up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was 10 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And then the technology, Emma, who
XRF,
I haven't
yeah.
mentioned Emma, incredibly important person, because we can take stuff to Emma and in minutes. well, this is the alloy that it is. This is this, and boom, boom, boom. And
Yep.
so Emma's been an incredibly important part.
Yeah, her and Laird were on my show.
Oh.
We had them on just last month in May.
Yeah, no.
Phenomenal. And we called her. She was Rookie of the Year for season 10.
Yep.
Yeah, Emma was.
Oh no,
She would.
she's amazing.
Mhm.
And you know, down the road, I'm gonna have. I think I would like to be a professor at Oak Island U, because some of the facilities and the expertise, you know, it's like a little university all of its own.
Yeah, and now you can do stuff for other people too. There, I
Yeah,
guess.
You
that's
did
really
right. I actually
amazing.
had an anesthetist call me, you know, and they're like, "Oh my God, you know, so you can take a coin that you've recovered from a shipwreck that's been on the bottom of the ocean since the 1500s,
Mhm.
and so it hasn't been disturbed. You know, it's been there, and you can identify a coin, you know, say from a particular mine, and Emma can run it through the XRF, and she can get a fingerprint.
Yep.
So she can look at the alloys and the composition
Yep.
of that and say, yes, okay, that is our base sample. That was from this mine in 15 whatever. And then so some numismatist can say, hey, I've got this guy coming in trying to sell me this coin that's, you know, looks like this.
Right.
And they can run it through and they can say,
Nope.
Yep.
Yeah, no, she's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
What an advantage, because I know before it was always we had to wait, you know, months sometimes. You
we
know.
had wonderful people, Dr. Christopher So, you know,
Yes,
SMU,
yes.
and it's still, I think, very involved.
Oh yeah.
And folks, Carmen, you know, who can identify things, but it's just this team, this big team
Mhm.
atmosphere. But having the technology, as you said,
Yep.
the advance, you know, I think when the show started, there probably weren't even cell phones. Well, maybe there were, I don't know. But you know, at the end of the day,
Flip
we had,
phones,
we
they were
had a
flip phones.
lot of string,
Yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of big bean cans.
Hey, what's going on in the money pit? Yeah. So yeah, those changes I think have been big. But like I said, I've only been involved. This is my 5th year, so
Yeah.
you know, I'm still big time newbie to this. But even in that period, I've seen a lot of change.
Oak Island U. Yeah, people are talking about it already. Oak Island University. Got to do it. You
Yeah,
have to do it.
Yeah, sign up. There's like limited seats.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
We're actually having hats and t-shirts.
Oh, that's a great seller. That's going to be
Yeah,
a top
yeah,
seller right there. Yeah, might even replace these. Oh man, I see you've got a green one on today because I have the other one.
But you can get a degree in the arts and the sciences. There's a lot of technology. It's experiential. We'll have field trips all the
Oh my
time.
gosh. Yeah.
Dive courses.
Dive courses. Yeah,
Oh, see, yeah.
and a lot of wood.
And a lot. What happens to all that wood? Anyway,
Oh, it's all well. That goes back to folks like Joan, and who incredibly important in archiving, making sure that it's all archived. We know exactly where it is. Got all sorts of tags on it, so it's a resource for somebody down the line.
Yep,
And
yep.
but Rick and Marty and Craig have really made it an environment where they have their own archive. Everything's cataloged. You have Steve. Everything's pinned. So
Mhm.
it's really a pretty tightly run ship, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That really truly is. Last question. Dowsing.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a fan of dowsing? Do you know much about dowsing? I mean, I know it's not a question that you guys would probably be. Well, what do you think about dowsing? We know that Dan Blankenship, it's at least the story I've heard, is Dan Blankenship found 10x that spot by dowsing.
So here's my take on it. A person, Dr. Fred Michael, who's been involved, he works in water, brilliant man. He said there's 3 names for dowsing. There's dowsing, there's witching. What's the 3rd name?
And I know this. I should know this.
Yeah, I should too. And I've actually posed the question because I've forgotten. But dowsing, witching, and divining.
Divining. Yes.
And he said, well, witching, that's negative. Like divining, pause. He said, no, Fred was saying, this is something that's worked for people all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And why it works is perhaps unknown, but it has worked. So do I believe in it? Well, no, that's not what I do as a scientist.
Right. It's not
But
science.
do I acknowledge it? And do I respect those folks? Absolutely. And if you know, to be so reductive as to say there's no scientific, that's not the road I travel. And so, yeah, I certainly respect the folks who do that and have success with it.
And I've been on the ocean pretty much all my life, and we're a very superstitious bunch.
Yes.
And it's I've seen so many things that it's like if you had to explain, you couldn't explain.
Right.
Mhm.
And so, will I discount it? No. Do I understand it? No. And if somebody says to me, and it's probably that Tinkerbell thing. I'm always looking for lost stuff. If you tell me there's something over there and you found it by dancing under the moon naked, then I don't care. I'm going to go and look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I find there's, being super reductive is not very, is does not apply a worldview to problems. So I just, if it works for folks, then I respect that.
Right.
That's where I leave. But I I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, nor do I.
No.
But there's years ago, and just still to this day, quite honestly, there are well diggers, drillers
Mhm.
that will actually douse first, and then say, okay, this is the best spot right here. We're going to find water at 50 feet or whatever. Drill, find it. They know by
Yeah.
dowsing. I don't understand how it works. I have
Mm.
no clue.
No, I
But
don't
the
think.
divining was with a stick,
Right.
and the stick would bend or
Right.
down or something
Mhm.
like that when it come to water or whatever. It's like, how
But-
does that?
But Fred's point was that there's negative connotations, there's positive, it's all over the map, but it's done the world over.
Right.
This
right.
is not something that's confined to just one group.
Mm.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
there you go.
Excited about, well, if there is going to be a season 11, which we don't know for sure yet,
Mhm.
would you be excited about such a thing? About,
To me, after last year, yeah, I think there's every reason to be
Okay.
excited about continuing to explore. There was, from my perspective, so many very interesting things. I know that the people I work most closely with were very excited by last year. New tunnels,
yes.
Lot 5. They were key things, artifacts that were found that I think there were coins that were found. I think the water work has continued to be provocative.
Mhm.
We're just working really hard to understand just how far we can take it. So yeah, there's every reason to remain interested.
Yep.
Yeah, last year I think that was very exciting.
What do you think?
Well, I think, to Ian's point before, I mean, all the stuff that's been found, it doesn't sort of answer any questions. It just poses more,
Right.
and like everything you find, it's like, well, yeah, that's kind of cool, but,
Yeah.
in what
Good point.
context?
Yeah.
And so there's so much more that's been found that needs to be investigated. And I mean, you could have season 11, season 12, season 20. It's
Yeah.
If the finding continues and it just keeps,
It keeps happening.
yeah. And I mean, the whole island is like a giant Swiss cheese of rabbit holes. And so whatever rabbit hole you jump down, there's always another one to come up.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's what we're all finding in all our different fields.
That's
Yep.
what amazes me.
Yeah.
People say, "Oh, it's just like any other island." Come on. No, sorry, I've been on it. You too.
Mm.
It's not like Covey Island, Bachman's Island. It's not Rafus or Malone. It's not the gooseberries.
Right. Yeah. I think
It's-
even
it's-
Marty mentioned that. He said, could you go on any of these other islands and find the things that they found on Oak Island?
No.
You'll find stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Like-
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
like, don't get
this
me
is
wrong. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
there's coins and there's bones and there's artifacts on all these islands out here, but not to the age range and the extent.
The complexity.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like, I don't think you'll go to another swamp and find a road
Right.
underneath it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Underneath-
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something I've said, and it'll, that whether there were TV cameras on Oak Island or not, if the TV show ended today and there was going to be no more TV show, I have a personal feeling that Rick Lagina is not going to give up. He wants answers.
No, absolutely.
So
you're absolutely
it may
correct.
not be funded the way, I don't know, and I have no idea. And when I say that, I'm completely, again, talking out of ignorance about funding, but he would continue the search.
But I think there's a Tony and an Ian, and there's a Doug and I can keep that would probably
Be there too.
be there. That's a sign of
Yeah.
a true leader, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
yeah, that would
The
there's
Fellowship of the Dig.
there's something a lot more than the production side of things that's keeping this rolling.
Yep. Exactly right. You'd still be diving it.
Oh, well, look at my daughter now, for goodness sake.
Yes.
She's diving it with me.
Yeah. So when are we going to see her on Oak Island?
Oh,
On the
I
show.
don't know. Stay tuned.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah. Okay. Well, I tell you what, this has been fantastic. I know that we didn't need Steve. You know, I mean,
No. If there's one person on Oka, we need Steve.
Yeah, I know. I say that, but I meant tonight here on the show tonight. But no,
Steve's
he
incredibly important.
he is. He
Yeah.
truly is. And I know I've had the opportunity to talk with him on the show before.
Mm.
And that's one of those things we kind of talked about a little bit tonight. But that's one of the important factors is, with the archaeology, the documentation of every single thing that is happening
Mhm.
on Oak Island, whether it's a pull tab
Mhm.
or a significant piece of jewelry found. Documenting every single thing that happens on Oak Island is important. And he is, he's going out there and showing this is where we found this piece, and then putting it all together. He works a lot with Craig to
Yeah, he works with Craig very closely.
Yeah,
but he
to
works with
document it.
Laird very, very closely. He
Yeah.
works with Joan very, very closely.
how
And so,
important.
yeah.
Every
it-
person that's on the island, including diving and the things that you do, has a piece that fits into this.
And pity the fool who does not get there. You can't just sort of run off with whatever you found and not get it in that database. 'Cause
Right.
then it kind of messes up the whole thing.
And,
Yeah.
and that's the thing, like you said there before, and Ian was mentioning, like, with, again, getting back to the technology, like I can have a mark offshore now, and I can blow an SMB, a surface marker buoy on that spot, and we can rip Steve out in the boat, and he can pin it.
Yep.
And I might be able to pin it to degrees, minutes, seconds, 0.1, and he can take it to inches.
Mhm.
And the important thing for me is like, so, okay, we're going to go back and say, Rick wants to say, hey, Tony, go back and look at that next week. I can go out with Steve's numbers, drop a marker buoy. And then
And there it is.
and then I'm on that. I can go down and he might say, well, let's run out 100-foot circular pattern around it and let's see if there's anything else. And I have that data.
Yep.
Where before it was a bit of a fishing trip.
Yep.
Mhm.
Wow. Man, I can't wait. Can't wait for season 11. If there is one, I can't wait for it.
Neither can I.
Yeah, it should be good.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. I tell you what, thank you guys so very much for
You're
coming on
welcome.
tonight,
Yep.
because every time we have one of these discussions, we learn so much more about what's going on and trying to get to the bottom of this mystery and the 100 and some people that have been watching here with us tonight. I know I missed most of the chat going by simply because I was so engaged with what you guys were talking about, but that's the beauty of it. So now we can go back and watch this again and again and get more stuff of this. So many people have been bringing up stuff that I haven't even been able to read. So, but I really appreciate every one of you that come to watch this. I really do. It's fantastic.
Nope. Well,
So-
thanks for having us. I
Yeah,
mean,
thanks for having us and thanks
Yeah.
for watching.
yeah, thanks
it's-
folks
yeah.
out there too,
Yeah.
because I love the questions that come in, even if they're just to email.
Yeah.
Not too many.
There
Not
goes the
go-
microphone. I
she's-
guess that means it's time to go.
Yeah.
I'm going to hold it for a second.
Yeah.
But again, if you guys come up here, if any of you, and I've had an absolutely wonderful, this was the best trip that I have ever taken in my entire life, was coming up here to Nova Scotia and meeting all of you in person, that you guys have honored me by coming on my show, and I got to meet you guys. And you sang me happy birthday. I still can't get over that. And you gave me the shirt off your back.
Tony.
Yeah, I mean, but folks, honestly, that may not happen for you, but you need to come up here and check this out. And if you do, Salty Dog Sea Tours is an absolute must. You must go on that. Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Just going out there and listening to your stories and taking that and getting your perspective on it, it's priceless.
Plus, it's beautiful out there.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. This whole area is beautiful. It truly is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to buy property.
And with that being said, let's go to the bar.
Let's go to the bar. All right. Thanks, folks, for being here with us tonight. We've had a great time. I just, look, we got all these messages from Linda that I have not even been paying. She's probably been yelling at me the whole time. Jess Grolo wants to know if Tony's been diving in any of the Great Lakes.
Yes, I have.
Interesting. All right. Jess, you know who Jess Grolo is? Jess was on Beyond Oak Island with her husband, Mike.
Yes.
And they went out to Poverty Island.
Yes.
Mhm.
So that's who Jess and they were on the final. They've been out there. There's been 3 different things on Poverty Island, and they were on the final one.
Very
think it
cool.
was
Very
that,
cool.
and,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the Great Lakes is full of wrecks.
Oh
And-
yeah,
and
absolutely.
A lot of it's clearing up now because of the zebra mussels as well.
Mhm.
So they're
Easier
filtering.
diving, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the
Yeah.
water's clearer, and we're finding that here as well. You know, when we get a good week
Mhm.
with easterly winds, and Ian, you've probably seen that as well.
Yeah, it clears. Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't know how you do your job. So it can be very murky.
Yeah.
And the sharks too.
And the
Lots of-
sharks.
lots of sharks. now.
Yeah.
Or when you were with the Witta. And
Oh,
and
yes,
that salad. You said it was like
Mungweed,
swimming. Yeah, the mung.
mungweed,
You were like
yeah.
swimming in a salad.
Yeah.
And it was awful. How could you get any? You close your eyes and just feel. I
Yeah,
think
it's
you
all by
mentioned that.
Brian.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. We got to wrap it up. Thank you. Mic drop. Thank you, folks, for being here with us tonight. We really do appreciate it so much. And again, my hat's off to you guys. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. No, thank you.
By coming on
Thank
the
you.
show. All right. Stay tuned. We got a couple more shows coming up this week. We're going to Skinwalker Ranch. And we're going to be doing Beyond Skinwalker Ranch and then the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch on Friday night. The next 2 nights in a row, we're going to be doing one of them from Tom Burns' house. So there you go. We're going to have a lot of fun. And I am going to be leaving here with a tear in my eye to leave Nova Scotia, but I am coming back. Be warned, I'm coming back.
We'll
All
be
right.
here. Well, will we?
We'll be
We'll
here.
be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unless
All
it's
right.
Chester Race Week.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah.
heard about that too.
Yeah.
I'm going to miss that. But
That's
all
a lot
right.
of fun.
Thank you, folks. And catch you next time right here on the Curse of Oak Island and Beyond live stream. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Au revoir.